picture of it. He showed me a picture of it.
Well, our pastor's wife works that same area, and she said she was 6 feet from where it happened. I was like, oh my gosh, that'd be scary.
All right, we're getting ready to go.
All right.
Scary when my wife ran into the house, I'll tell you that.
All right, we're good.
All right, welcome everybody to the November 3rd Board of Education work session at 5:05 p.m. Brennan, could you call the roll?
Mr. King?
I'm here.
Ms. Reese is absent. Ms. Sebastian?
Here.
Mr. Elam?
Here.
Ms. Mansfield?
Here.
Is there any new agenda items on that any of the board members need or for the administrative team? Okay. Then we'll move on. Next, does anybody have any public comments with regards to the agenda?
I have not received any.
Do you see me on YouTube?
I do not.
All right. Thanks, Brendan.
I'm kind of breaking in and out.
Okay. Next up, we stop my. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. So hearing none, moving on to important dates for the district. We have our special meeting tomorrow for the CMR interviews. Starting on our November 9th, we have the facilities meeting at 6 p.m. The Board of Education regular meeting will follow that at 7. Parent teachers conferences. Is that going to be for middle school, high school?
So I think the plan
Or is that elementary or the whole school?
The plan is they're going to give parents the option of either doing a face-to-face parent-teacher conference or virtually, depending upon if families feel comfortable coming to school or not.
Okay, that makes sense. And then we move into the Thanksgiving break, followed by the next work session on the 1st of December. Does anybody have any other important dates or events occurring that needs to be added? Hearing none, I'll accept that and we will move forward. Next up then, Brandon, I'll turn it back over to you for treasurer's items requesting board action.
Thank you, Mr. King. The only thing I have to approve tonight, and the reason why it's tonight and not next Monday, the closing of the certificate of participations will be done by the end of this week. I have been working with Red Tree Investments to utilize them to invest the proceeds. This is the same investment firm that we used when the district issued the high school bonds, so we're very familiar with them. With the current market and the way the market is, we would not earn what we were previously earning in our money market account. So we have to, since we're not going to need a lot of the funds for at least possibly between 9 and 12 months, it's better to invest in other instruments such as commercial paper, banker's substance, municipal bonds and stuff like that. One of the requirements per our board investment policy is that if the district wants to invest, the board has to approve by 2/3 vote to authorize the treasurer to do this. So this is what the resolution in this request is asking for board action.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'm having some technology issues, but I'm back. I'm started with phone back to my computer now. So with regards to this, I know that Julie couldn't be here tonight because she is working the polls, supporting the entire community and our national peace process or democratic process. So she was really concerned about voting on an item tonight and not being here, specifically on one to vote to pass. Now we have more than 2/3 here, but I thought I would bring that up and to the other board members if they had any comments with regards to this item.
Jacob, I had also talked to her and she expressed a lot of concerns about that. And I said, do you have issues with this? And she said, no, other than voting on it in a non-board meeting. But she had no issues with the resolution itself.
Okay. And Brennan, what does this do to our capabilities? I know you, could you restate why we're voting on it tonight versus at the regular meeting again?
Because what I'm having done, rather than have the proceeds transferred to our bank, I'm having the proceeds transferred to our investment account with Retry, and they're going to immediately start investing. So every day matters. So, with the market and since today's election, there could be, the market might not be as good as it is, say, Thursday as it will be Monday. So that couple of days does matter. So in order to proceed, I need to have this approved before I sign off on their for them to invest.
Okay. Right. Anyone else have any other comments?
Brennan, I just wanted to ask, is this Red Tree Investments, I've looked at the past history that you sent us. This will still be in relatively liquid investments. So like when we need the money in 9 months to a year, won't be any issue to get it, correct?
Correct. Also, Ryan from Red Tree has asked that once we have our construction manager at risk, determine and start the process of planning to come into those meetings, so he has a better concept of when the money will be needed to pay the bills that are associated with our two projects.
And hopefully that will get us a better return, correct?
Correct.
So Brandon, the way I understood it is if we wait till the next meeting, we could be losing return on our investments significantly, or at least they could be impacted. And so we're delaying the ability to earn money as we go forward.
Correct.
Okay. All right. With that, then, is there a motion?
I will move.
Thank you, Lori. Is there?
I had to wait for my dogs to be quiet. I'm sorry. I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion? Okay. Brennan, could you call the roll?
Miss Sebastian,
Yes.
Miss Mansfield,
Yes.
Mr. Elam,
You're on mute.
Mr. Elam,
Sorry. Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes. Okay. Moving on is turn it over to Mr. Ferks for superintendent's items requesting board action.
Good evening. I have one item for consideration this evening, although I know typically we don't go through hiring processes during special Board of Education meetings. I do know that work sessions. I do know that the IT department has been short-staffed for several weeks, up to a month now. And with the recent change to remote learning for the middle school and high school, and not knowing what's going to happen with elementary down the road, I have added our new technology support specialist, Mr. Christopher Hutnick, to the agenda. Went through the interview process. Christopher did a very good job as far as explaining how his educational experience and then also background would be a good benefit in the school system. He's recently relocated to the area. His wife is stationed at Wright Pat Air Force Base. And so if you look through his resume, he has moved quite a bit, but it was more for military station moves. Feels very confident that she's going to be stationed at the base for quite a while and hopes to settle in and make this a long-term permanent solution for his employment. So there is Christopher Hutnick. His resume is attached, and then the hourly rate as well. Brennan, you have the ability to pull up the resume.
Do we want to do that?
Okay, that's it's under executive, so you can pull it up and look at it on your own.
Yeah. It had some personal information on there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you.
But I believe we all had access to it and were able to review it.
Okay.
So is there a motion to hire Christopher Hutnick, technology support specialist at $16.80 an hour? Is that 80 or 50?
80, I believe.
80. Okay.
I'll move.
Thank you, Danny, for the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Lida, for the second. Do we have any further discussion?
When will he start, Justin?
Well, I mean, we received all his background checks, everything cleared. As soon as he gets approved, well, he's up for if he gets approved this evening, we would have him come in immediately and meet with Amy Mathis and financial office and do all of his payroll and paperwork. And then I think once that's completed, Brennan, is there anything else holding him up from starting?
No.
So I think, we could probably set up a meeting for him to come in ASAP if he's approved this evening to get paperwork started and insurance, those kind of things selected, and then get him transitioning into the district soon.
Excellent. Any other items for discussion? Brennan, could you call the vote, please?
Mr. Elam,
Yes.
Miss Mansfield,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Miss Sebastian.
Yes.
All right. Next up, Mr. Firks, you have number B.
Yeah, I apologize. I forgot about the second one. This was one that came from the athletic department. We've been kind of in a couple of month search for a varsity swim coach. Thought we had some individuals lined up, didn't end up working out for their schedules. And so Mrs. Deanna Merlin has stepped to the plate and been willing to take on a varsity swim. So I believe her resume is attached as well. I think some of you folks are probably familiar with her as well. And so she's got experience in the district. And so we're excited to have her come on board as the swimming team is starting practices very, very soon.
All right. Do we have a motion to hire Miss Merlin as the varsity swim coach, step 3?
I'll move.
Thank you, Lori.
I'll second.
Thank you, Danny. Brennan, could you call the roll of the vote?
Miss Sebastian,
Yes.
Mr. Elam,
Yes.
Miss Mansfield,
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes. All right, thank you. Moving on for discussion coming up for the next board meeting, turn it over to Mr. Hattery.
Thank you, Mr. King. Board, for the next Monday, I'll have the following items. we'll have the minutes up there for the October meeting. Notice it appears that they didn't come over properly, so I'll work with Della to get that on there for Monday. But those are the two meetings, the work session and regular meeting that we had last month. Payment of bills for October as attached. The monthly financial report as attached, and I was able to get that completed this afternoon. The amended appropriations, a couple things to note, and I also included in your executive content. The general fund is mainly related to, we've got a rough estimate of the first semester for online option C. So that's in there, as I didn't have the total accurate or estimated numbers based off enrollment until this past couple weeks. The permanent improvement decrease is related since the district successfully paid off the land during this last month. So we no longer have the principal payments. Capital projects fund, that's related to the district and Garmin Miller entering the architect agreement, as well as the early payoff penalty by paying off the land early, as those are the big dollar amounts that you see there. Also for Fund 51, we get that state grant every year, the same dollar amount. It's K through 12 connectivity grant. We got our first payment this past week, so I properly appropriated what we are allowed to spend on. Letter F is donations. The athletic department received an anonymous donation of $500, as well as we received our Kettering Health Network for the athletic fund for $15,000 per the agreement that the district signed 2 years ago. And then letter G would be the 5-year forecast. And if the board is okay, I can do my presentation now for that. Let me bring it up. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Brennan, do you want to wait to do this until Julie's here, or, I mean, you can go ahead. I'm fine. She said she'd listen to it. I just want to check.
Yeah, I'm going to do it because next week we have, I think,
A lot of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. And I was just thought this would be a more appropriate time to do it, so we're not have a long meeting next Monday.
Okay.
So, again, reasons for a 5-year forecast, as I always state in every presentation.
Brennan, is there a way to make the screen a little larger, please?
Can you make it a little bigger?
Even with my glasses, I can't see it.
Hold on. Is it better if I just do it?
Can you open it in board docs and share that way?
Is it better this
There you
way?
go. Yeah.
Is that better?
Uh-huh.
Okay. I had it as the presenter view, so I won't do that.
Yeah.
So again, it helps the board and the community engage in long-range planning. It helps the board and the district determine 412 certificates, and then it provides a method for Department of Education out of state to identify school districts with potential financial problems. The 5-year forecast layout, we have the general fund, and then we have the substitute emergency levy fund. The major revenues are real estate taxes, income taxes, state funding, which is the foundation payments, and then all other revenue, with the biggest receipt in that category as the TIF payment. Expenditures, biggest 5 categories are salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies and materials, and capital outlay. So if we look first at revenues, a little different design this year to show the breakout. Our major four components, as you can see for this year, are state funding, real estate, income tax, and then all other revenues, which the majority of that is the TIF. And then based on expectations, assumptions, as you can see in 5 years, we kind of see a little shift where we have more of our revenue source come from income tax as well as all other, as you know, the TIF is gradually increasing every year as more and more homes are built, and as well as our income tax is going to gradually build each year, as well as the income tax base is increase with the more residents moving into our school district. So that is the breakout from where we are right now projected for this year to fiscal year 25. So revenues, real estate, the county went through a reappraisal this past calendar year. There were some valuation changes. Residential went up 13% and ag values declined due to House Bill 49. That kind of shifted the tax is from the ag taxpayers to the residential, but however, it does not result in any lower taxes for the district. One thing that we're pretty much there, we're 0.001 mil as of right now. There's a bill that prevents a certain floor that school districts can't go for current expense villages, which are inside or out. After the reappraisal, we're basically there. So as the next update or the next reappraisal, there's not going to be where the county auditor can adjust the tax millage, as because we're already at the bare minimum. As if you remember the last presentation, I had projected only 90% collection rate due to the current COVID situation. However, we have collected at a 99%. Talking with treasurers that have been in this county for a while, as well as the county auditor, even with certain other financial and economic situations, the collection of taxes really didn't see any decrease. So therefore, I'm projecting a collection rate between 98 and 99% for this 5 years, based on the current data that I have. The income tax was renewed back in November of last year. It's about 14% of our total revenue that we bring in. Due to the recent events, growth has been curbed a little bit. We've been experiencing about an 8 to 10% growth every year. However, due to COVID as well, it has leveled off a little bit. We did just get our October statement, our October collection, and it came in 3% higher than what was projected. So that's a good sign. We're still right on track with our projection for the year. I believe we have brought in about 51% of the anticipated revenues related to that revenue source. So even with the COVID and the extended deadline, because of the tax filing was extended till July 15th, we really haven't seen a major impact on that. But that is one thing to keep an eye on as however long COVID lasts. State funding is another one that, is our big ticket revenue as well. State funding has remained flat for this fiscal year, and it's based off of what we received in fiscal year 20 after the budget cut. Since we are a growing schooling district, we are receiving additional funding. For fiscal year 21, it's estimated about $400,000 additional revenue that we will be receiving. The next biennial budget is coming up in the spring. There's talks about the CUP funding model. Maybe some of that might get introduced for the next biennial budget. But this is one thing that I'll be definitely monitoring. As before the COVID and everything, and before the change in funding, we were a cap district. We were losing the third most out of any school district in the state of Ohio. So any change to the formula or how schools are funded, 99% sure it's going to benefit us in a positive way. So that's one of the things to keep an eye on as we go forward. The last one is all of the revenue. TIF payments are here. It generated about $2.1 million for the general fund. Remember, after we put 30% of that into the capital projects fund, now with us issuing the certificate of participations, as well as having an amortization schedule related to the debt, one thing the board can look at is passing a different resolution to only have to transfer what is needed to make the principal payments each year and not do a 30%. So that's one thing probably going to talk to Jennifer about to see what we can do in regards to that. So we're not putting more in the capital projects fund than is needed, since we already know what our current projects are. The next is to look at expenditures breakout. And for a majority of us, for majority of schools, the three big ones are purchase services, salaries, and benefits. As you can see, the breakout between this year and 5 years out, as you see, there's a little shift. Reason for that is, we're growing. So each year we're hiring more staff. So you're going to see a more shift, a higher percentage of expenditures related to salary and benefits. For expenditures, fiscal year 21, we fired 5 additional staff. This doesn't include the second additional social emotional counselor, as we're using the student wellness dollars to pay for that position, and that is in a different fund. We're projected right now to, in the budget or in this forecast, is 4 certified staff and 1 bus driver for fiscal year 22 through fiscal year 25. Now, as you remember, that has always changed in the spring. So we could see more or we could see less. It just depends the number of kids that we come in, and then where the need is, and administration decides where the most need is for the additional staff. We also, just remember, we also brought in the custodians in previous years. Those have been under purchase service. From here on out, they will be shown in salary and benefits. Benefits increase mainly because of we have more staff, but also insurance rates have increased. The district saw a 7.5% increase for fiscal year 21 related to their health insurance, and a 2% increase related to their dental and vision. Projecting 10% for fiscal year 22-25 and a 2% for all the other benefits. One thing I think the district should look at, and I'm currently working with Montgomery Bender, is maybe go to the market to see what other consortiums are out there and see if there's a better plan, not just for the district, but also for the staff. Purchase services is, 27%. Majority is related to services that we get through the ESCs, repairs, maintenance, and legal fees. The district entered an agreement for modulars for 3 years. So you'll see the startup cost for this year, and then the next 2 years as well. You'll see the monthly estimated rental agreement payment. We also entered an agreement for communication services. That's another increase related here, and going forward, you'll see that, as well as for this year with COVID, we offered an online option C. So those costs related to that, anticipated costs, are reflected in fiscal year 21 here. Supply of materials, it's so hard to predict because you don't know what you need with instructional related due to, the ever changing and student population and everything. So we haven't seen many fluctuations. So the 2% here. We also, this is the first year of a 6-year for the adoption of the new ELA, as well as I don't know if it'll be this year or next year, but there's other subjects that will be updated as well as we go through. So that could, as of right now, I don't have that in here as I think we're still waiting and seeing. So, but as of right now, just projecting a 2% increase. Last one is capital outlay. Majority of this is Chromebooks, laptops, and equipment for staff and students, as well as operational equipment for maintenance and transportation. We do have 2 permanent improvement levies that generate $547,000 that we try to utilize those funds for certain things, for certain projects and improvements in the school district. As of right now, the majority of this cost is going to be if we need Chromebooks, laptops, and equipment for staff and students. However, depending the district takes, we could see additional costs if there's any immediate needs for the district. So based off of that, this is the projected 5-year outlook. The first green circle is the ending balance for each fiscal year, and that's with the current levies that we have. We do have a operating levy that will need to be renewed either next year in November or the following year, as is expiring in 2022. And then the bottom shows if those levies are not renewed. So as of right now, projecting a deficit spending in every 5 years. But as you know, to me, this is the worst case scenario for the school. And we've done pretty well for me being here the last 2 years, the district as a whole has seen a surplus. So there's just a little more uncertainty this year with COVID and also offering an online option that, could have a little impact. But as of right now, I'm very confident that things are still looking positive for the school as a whole. One thing always you can do, and with our cash policy that we have adopted, is we try to have a reserve balance of 60 days based off of the assumptions. This is how the true cash days are determined for the next 5 years. It's a steadily decline. But overall, right now, we're still projected 107 days carry out at the end of this fiscal year, which is pretty good for our school district. So in conclusion, things to monitor, obviously the operation levy to renew, the biannual budget, student enrollment growth, the COVID, if it continues, are we going to offer second semester online? What other protocols or whatever options are we going to have? Obviously, planning the elementary building and stadium project, monitoring the TIF revenue, and then any other economic developments within the school district. And I have any questions?
Hey, Brandon, this is Jacob. I had a couple of questions.
Sure.
Could you go back to the slide where it talked about staff predictions?
Yes.
So was the FY 22 to 25 projected to hire 4 certified staff and 1 bus driver? Is that predicted for each year, or is that total for those 4 years?
Each year.
Okay. One of the things that I was hoping we'd be able to incorporate as well is looking at as the staff increases, that we could see 500 plus more students over that time frame. So I'm good that we're seeing the increase in staff and bus drivers. But what about like administrative personnel, human resources, people that are going to help manage the staff? I don't see us predicting any of them or additional. I know you brought up one, but other certified or classified. Because some of the things I was thinking that we should be looking at probably now is if we do build the new elementary that has its own cafeteria, is my assumption, then we'll need more food service staff and probably a work leader over there under the director of food services. And then probably additional custodians for that facility. IT maybe, I'm not sure, but I don't know if any of those are being considered. We would consider those now, or are those next year, or because right, the building should be here before we know it. So, and then the other piece too was looking at whether we grow assistant principal in high school, middle school, or a dean of students that supports both to assist those principals, to possibly also be looking at the need for an assistant superintendent at some point. I don't know what the trigger points are for those, but those are the things that I see on my looking at the school. Those are, with our growth of staff and students, those are areas that I see that we should be looking at for what is our trigger point to need to develop those and ensure that we are incorporating them in our projected expenditures going forward. Those are my thoughts.
Okay. Good questions. So for food service, keep in mind, those are paid out of the food service fund. So this is only looking at general fund and emergency fund. So our goal would be to have the food service fund pay for those additional staff required. As far as additional custodians and additional IT, that would be probably something that Justin and administration and I would need to look at. But with the building being 3 years out, I don't know if it's the right time to look at that per se. Usually a budget, after you get after the second year, it's kind of hard to predict what's going to happen. So I always try to do the 5-year, but I'm more concerned for this year and next year because it's more closer to happening. But as the time goes and we look at staffing and everything, I'm sure Justin and I with administration will look at that. But as of right now, I mean, it's 3 years out, so I don't see the need to look at that right this second because it's so far out. Also, the assistant principal, that would be something that Justin and the administration team would, have to look at as, that's more of in their line of what they feel is going to be best for the district staff and students. So it hasn't been brought to my attention yet, but if that's something down the road, obviously we can reflect that in the 5-year forecast.
Okay. Yeah. I want to be extremely transparent with our community because I think the last thing we want to do is build the building and then we get all the staff to support it, whether, teachers, classified, certified, all the staff and everything, and the electric bills that are going to come with it, the heating bill, and all of a sudden now we can't afford to operate. And that's one of my biggest fears because that's what every school district in the past has kind of got the new building and then turn around and be like, hey, it costs us so much more money to run this that we need to add an additional levy to the ballot because we didn't forecast it to be this high. And so I just know we need to get that on our radar at some point and start looking at what is our forecast modeling for funding costs for electric, gas, manpower, all of those kind of pieces as we go forward from this. So whether, that's you and Justin kind of looking at that based on the staffing needs and obviously the financial direction needs as well. But I know we definitely want to be on the table with all of it as soon as we possibly can to the community. If we're able to do it as we are building it right now with internal funding options and not asking for money to do this entire project, almost hurts us to see that if we wouldn't be able to continue to fund it without going back to the voters for something. So that's all.
Another thing to take into consideration with the upcoming selection of the CMR, and as we move forward with educational visioning and design process, I know as a district, we'll also be going through POR, which stands for Program of Requirements. So that'll take care of some of those discussions that you're talking about as far as how many custodians are we going to need, how many food services personnel. You're looking at different classroom spaces, instructional staff, aides. So those kind of things will come up during that creation of that POR, which will then lead us into some of those discussions as far as potential additional staffing that we'll need to have for the upcoming building project.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That'll definitely help us. At least we have the guide that drives what we're needed to staff it, so we can get that out there and get that kind of in the book, so we know what we're looking at down the road. So we can make financial decisions now to support ourselves down the road, so that we don't have to ask for more money. Is ultimately the goal.
Yeah, and Jacob, I'm going to piggyback on what you said. We've talked historically about when we might need an assistant superintendent, when we might need an assistant principal at the high school, middle school. I would like by next forecast, Justin, you to have that plan together and in the 5-year forecast, because we can't be behind on this. I mean, you and Brennan's time the next 3 years is going to be nonstop building project, and it's going to be intense. I mean, you guys have been through this, at least Justin, I know you have, and I don't want to get 3 years out and realize, oh, we should have hired another person. We need to think through these things ahead of time.
And I just have a question about the slide with the 2 green circles.
Yeah.
Brendan, when you talk about our analysis without the levies, is there really such not a difference between the numbers? If those levies don't renew, I mean, they're almost the same.
It's just the one, and that the reason would be is because we're so close to the 20 mil floor that the only revenue that we would be losing would be related to inside millage.
Okay.
Because they can't lower the tax rate because we're already at the mill floor. So we're already guaranteed what's in inside millage. So basically that dollar difference is the inside millage.
Okay.
Mostly. Yeah.
Okay. I see.
It's the only one that we have in this time frame.
Okay.
That needs renewed. Now we do have a PI, but that's on permanent improvement fund, which is not reflected in the 5-year forecast. So
Gotcha.
we'll have 2 levies that either need to be removed next November or sometime in 2022.
Okay. Because that's always like the first slide I go to, and I was looking at it, I was like, man, that is weird.
Yeah, if you go back,
I was just like, oh my God. Okay.
If you wanted to see a big impact, if you go look at last year's November forecast, the income tax levy needed to be renewed.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't renewed, you'll see a major, because that's about 20% of our revenue.
For sure. So that's what I'm used to seeing, and that's why this one was a little weird to me. So,
yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
I just wondered why the fiscal year 25 is so much larger. And again, probably not anything to be that concerned about since it's so far out.
Yeah. You're going to have, the additional staff each year. I think also in 24 and 25, I did put extra for utilities because we'll have another building as well as the football stadium. But majority, you know, you're going to see larges because you're going to have more staff. And then if they elect to take our health insurance, those are going to be your two big increases each year.
Okay.
Is there any other questions?
So Brent, this is Jacob.
Sure.
Right. So as we look at the 5-year forecast, and ever since I've been on the board, we've pretty much always have operating in deficit spending from that angle. Is there ever a time that you can forecast or foresee, or any actions for us to not be deficit spending from that occurrence? I mean, more like a balanced spending, right? So that we're kind of, the money in is the same money going out, but because of our growth, that's why we're deficit spending in the middle of our processes, at least for the last 4 years. So.
Well, we haven't deficit spend in the last 3 fiscal years. Remember the first year I got here, it was about 60,000 surplus. And then the last 2 years, it's been about $600,000 each year surplus. Like I've always said, with a growing school district and being one of the top 5, and you're getting more and more students, well, not every student's going to need the same needs. So it's kind of hard to predict each year what the needs are for the incoming new students that we have. So rather be transparent and more safe, like I said, I consider this our worst case scenario. Now, since I've been here, I've been off, but I'd rather be prepared for what could happen than not seeing it and then blindsiding us and then we're scrambling. So, do I think we're going to have 348? No, but the unknown is if we do option C again for the second semester, that's not reflected in here. So more than likely, this may be more truer, because if you look at it, purchase services is going to be the hardest thing to predict, because the only things that I get as estimates are for the staff are estimates based off of what ESC is paying, but there's hourly rates for like PT, OT, all kinds of, the services that some students get, and that dollar amount's not known because it's based off the need. So you could have 1 year where you have hardly any OT and PT, and then next year you have 3 times. So, it's better to overestimate a little bit. And then as you notice, when I updated it in May, I lowered our budget, and it has more truer numbers in May than we would have right now in November. So,
And it's something to take into consideration for option C. I believe those seat licenses that we purchased were year long.
okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know if it
So,
was.
I mean, there's some potential for us when we do our parent community survey after Thanksgiving to see what people's plans are for the second semester. I mean, we could potentially have some more folks who sign up where we have to add some additional spots, but we could also, on the flip side, see some parents that want to come back where we open up some seats. So I don't know if we're going to have to add any. So
Okay.
that could be a good thing.
Yeah, that could be good. I didn't know that. I didn't know if it was just the first semester or the whole year. So
no, I mean, I will double check with Mr. Borchers, our curriculum director.
okay.
But I'm 99% sure what we've paid so far is for the entire year.
Okay. Well, that's a good thing then. So.
All right, Brennan, that's a great answer to the question I proposed. I really appreciate that. And, and as well, right, as we step into, was it 2022 or 2023, we would be starting a new contract year
For
the BEA.
That'd be
August 1 of 21 this year.
Yeah, so it'd be fiscal year 2022, which where that would be reflected.
So fiscal year 2022 is we're in 21. Okay. Yep.
Yep.
All right. And so I assume negotiations will start here fairly soon as we go forward throughout this year into 2021 up until the August. So, okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I had.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you having that cushion there, Brennan, because I know in the past we do still have an old elementary building. I mean, it's 100 years old, and sometimes unexpected things happen that are expensive, and we don't have the money in the PI budget to fix. I mean, I can think of pipes, I can think of outside the exterior, the lintels, and just things like that that might pop up in the next 10 years. So I really appreciate you giving us a conservative budget. We'll hope for the best, but I think it's best to give the community, this is where we think we might be at worst case scenario.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any more questions or comments? Okay, well, let's move on. Brennan, great job, great PowerPoint. Very easy to understand. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Next up, Mr. Firks, items for the board. Go 1 second. Lori has a question.
Actually, Brennan, if you go back to the minutes, when I pull it up in board docs, the minutes are actually up in the top of the screen. So just so you're aware, they are there. They're
Okay.
just in a different spot. So they're there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. All right, turn it over to Mr. Firks for the superintendent's items for the board meeting.
Number 8, letter A, is for the board to consider the leave of absence for Miss Megan Baker, elementary teacher in the 5th grade, starting December 16th, 2020 through February 19th, 2021 for the purposes of FMLA leave. Letter B is our regular approval of substitute teachers through the Miami County Educational Service Center that we get frequently. Letter C has to do with review of board policies. It'll be a first reading. I'll kind of run you through these one by one and give you the highlights of each one so that you're kind of aware of what's all entailed within there. And then also, if you have any questions, I can take some notes and then get a hold of our Neola rep as well, if it's kind of outside of my realm of knowledge, and then do some follow-up email responses to you for any questions you may have. So executive attachments that were provided, 1520 is a revision, has to do with employment of administrators. And so as far as the bylaws and policies here, just briefly reads that this policy has been revised to correct a Scrivener's error that occurred during a recent update. Note that the correction at the end of the second paragraph where the word not has been reinstated. So the revision should be adopted to maintain accurate policies, is what Neola has indicated. Policy 1530 has to do with evaluation of principals and other administrators. This one is a revision in regards to OTES, which stands for Ohio Teachers Evaluation System, and the removal of references to student growth measures as part of the evaluation process. Student growth measures would be like value-added data, those kind of things. The Ohio Department of Education has removed student growth measures. They're no longer available and no longer used during evaluations. So obviously this is going to be revised to maintain accurate policies. So that was the change with 1530. Policy 2270 has to do with a revision in regards to religion and curriculum. It specifically indicates that school districts cannot prohibit students from engaging in religious expression when completing homework, artwork, or any type of other classroom assignment. The assignments must be graded or scored using ordinary academic standards, and therefore grades shall not be rewarded or penalized to a student based on any religious content that they use. The revised policy reflects current Ohio law and should be adopted to maintain accurate policies. Policy 2431 has to do with interscholastic athletics. It requires each board to establish a minimum GPA for all students through grades 12 to participate in interscholastic extracurricular activities. It also notes that because of COVID, that the fall eligibility requirements for all schools in the state of Ohio have been removed because of the inconsistency with remote learning versus in-school learning. And so the Ohio High School Athletic Association has taken that out for all students, grades 7 through 12, and has essentially labeled them eligible for the academic school year. And this is a revision reflects changes to current Ohio law and should be adopted to maintain accurate policies as well. Policy 3124 has to do with employment contracts. This policy removes reference to employment of administrators, which is covered in policy 1520. The revision is recommended for adoption, and essentially the information that was given to us by Neola is that because it's already covered, it's a duplicate. So I think there may have been a question on that, and if there's additional questions on that, I can definitely ask Mr. Burkhart and get some follow-up information. So anytime, feel free to let me know if you have questions. I'm not saying I'm going to have an answer, but I'll get you the information.
Yeah, I had a question on that one, so I'm going to interrupt you. So it is somewhere else in our policy manual then?
Yeah, that's what the update indicates, but I can definitely double check that and then send an email update to all to make sure that's correct.
Well, and I know some of those requirements are in ORC, and I didn't get the chance to go out and look at ORC today and see what all.
So I guess what is your question on that, so I can give him a call and ask him?
Well, I think I would like to keep a lot of those procedures in place, and if that's already done, that was my only concern.
Okay. All right.
Brennan, do you think you could be showing the policies as we get this overview?
I would have to log in to do that. I didn't know if you wanted to see them since they're only in draft form. So are you logged into your board docs?
Yeah, somewhere. It's okay.
They should be attached to the executive session.
Oh, I know. I saw them. Yeah, I read them. I just don't want
Yeah.
to maybe kind of follow along. That's okay. Don't worry about it.
Policy 5200 has to do with attendance. It's a revision, and essentially what this policy adds is the definition of medical excuse and provided some options for defining attendance in a remote learning or distance learning environment. So it has to do with those students, like for our example, that are in option C, try to make sure that we still have attendance procedures and protocols in place to make sure kiddos are staying engaged in their online lessons and are not skipping out on class just because they're at a remote learning environment. So the number of days and hours suggested are only offered as guidance. Numbers could be determined by the district. So that's adding the medical excuse option for remote learning.
Well, and I think, Justin, that one also took care of any child who's quarantined. It
Yes.
allows which is an important one since a lot of our kids have been affected with that. So
Yeah, absolutely. It basically just gives some districts flexibility because in the past with House Bill 410, as soon as kids were absent, you had to send them a letter and put the truancy officer on them. So it gives us a little bit of flexibility as kids transition from, if they're in a quarantine situation, from a traditional learning environment to a remote. They've also said, we understand there could be some hiccups as kids get familiar with Google Classrooms and those kind of things. So we're not really tied down to having to hammer down on them with truancy issues, which is good. But, if it becomes a recurring issue or a pattern, then we do also have some options to be able to do that as well. Policy 5517.02 is a rescinded policy or deleted policy in regards to sexual violence. The policy and administrative guidelines are being deleted and they're replaced with policy or administrative guidelines 22.
Wait, you said 5517 something something? I don't have that one. I don't see that one on our thing.
All right, let me check on that.
We go from 5200 to 5610.
Okay,
But it's deleted, so we didn't need to see that. He put in 2270 instead, Lida. You should see that one. That's what's going to
Yeah, I
replace
saw that.
it. Okay.
Okay, so it's deleting.
yeah,
Okay,
deleting because it's being replaced by AG 2266.
perfect.
Non-discrimination on the basis of sex and education programs and activities. So
Okay.
I can check into why. Maybe it's just because it's not on there. I mean, it's being taken out, so that's why.
Yeah.
maybe
No,
it's
that
not
makes
on there.
sense.
Okay.
Okay.
So policy 5610, removal, suspension, expulsion, and permanent expulsion of students. That is a revision in policy. I'm going to have to look into that one in a little bit more detail. I'm going to send an email out to you tomorrow on that one to get some more details on it, because I don't have anything provided in this right now as far as a description of what's all going on. So let me get some info from Neola on that. It's been a couple of weeks since I met with him, and I can't remember exactly what that one's about. So be on the lookout for an email in regards to that one. Policy 5611, due process and rights. Revisions to these policies provide for the use of preponderance of evidence, standards of evidence, and determination of student discipline. So this standard is consistent with the standard of evidence that has been applied in non-discrimination and anti-harassment policies in effect. So these revisions are recommended for adoption. And so it's just essentially adding specific terminology in dealing with student discipline and looking at that quote unquote preponderance of evidence in a student issue case. So it's more of coverage for the district. Policy 6144 has to do with investments. This policy has been revised to include provisions of House Bill 251 to increase from 5 to 10 years the maturity period of other political subdivision bonds and obligations eligible for investment of a district's interim monies. So this revised policy reflects current Ohio law and should be adopted to maintain accurate policies if the district wishes to take advantage of such investments. So I don't know if that's one you were aware of, Brennan, or not.
Yeah, that's the one Norm and I went over.
Okay, perfect. Policy 6152 has to do with student fees, fines, and charges. So this one is essentially a revision to provide the authorization to allow for online payment of fees, fines, and charges. Additionally, the policies have been streamlined to identify fees to be charged and waivers that may be available. So this is essentially allowing, I think, students to pay their class fees, lunch fees, any type of fees or fines, late book charges, etc., by using an online payment system, which we do have some of those in the district currently, allowing families to pay online options. Policy 6325 is a procurement of federal grants and funds. And so this policy has been revised to reflect the statutory language of Ohio Revised Code 3313.843 that allows for the purchase of services by a district from an ESC pursuant to the authority of the Ohio Department of Education. So it's essentially allowing us to use federal grant monies to continue to look at additional services that districts oftentimes that are smaller can't afford to buy on their own. So it's cheaper to essentially get services like your speech or occupational therapy, those kind of things from an ESC. Policy 6424 is procurement of cards. It's a replacement policy. This policy has been rewritten to reflect significant changes in the structure of this purchasing mechanism and to provide the appropriate structure and security for use of same. Procurement cards differ notably from credit or debit cards and are subject to the regulations of Senate Bill 312, which was passed in 2018. However, recent audits have found improper procurement card transactions and weak management controls in Ohio school districts, which I'm sure these were part of the auditor's findings. So this replacement is recommended for the adoption in the district if we would so choose to make use of procurement cards for purchasing, which I believe we currently do. Brennan, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Policy 8450.01 is our, never would have thought a couple years ago we'd now have to have a face covering policy in districts, but we do. And this will cover our basis as far as making sure, based on the guidance from the Ohio Department of Health, ODH, and also the CDC, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, that the district has a face covering policy during pandemic or epidemics, and that the district's restarting plan for the 2020-2021 school year also allows for us to enforce face covering wearings for students, district employees, and also any visitors or volunteers that visit the district. This new policy is provided for district consideration as well. Policy 8800 has to do with religious and patriotic ceremonies and observances. It's a revised policy. It's been revised because of recent changes enacted by House Bill 164. The new law defines religious expression to include prayer, religious gatherings such as prayer groups, distribution of written materials or literature of a religious nature, and any other activity of religious nature, including wearing symbolic clothing or expression of a religious viewpoint, as long as the expression is not vulgar, obscene, indecent, or offensively lewd. Boards are no longer permitted to restrict student exercise of religion to lunch periods or other non-instructional time periods. This could be like meet at the flagpole in the morning before school would be a good example of this. Finally, the law also declares that a school district may not prohibit a student from engaging in religious expression when completing homework, artwork, or any other type of classroom assignments. Rather, the assignment must be graded or scored using ordinary academic standards and shall reward nor penalize a student based on religious content. This policy 8800 also currently reflects Ohio law and should be adopted to maintain accurate policies. Is that all? I think I have all of them, don't I?
Did you do the one under 6,000? Sorry.
No, that's one I'm not seeing on here. I'm gonna have to check into that 6,000 one as well.
That's the tax abatement policy.
Tax abatement policy, excuse me.
Yep.
That's the one we pushed forward, Brendan.
Correct.
And 8650 on the transport by school van.
Yeah, 8650 because we've now purchased school vans. We've never had to have an EOL policy before, and now we're going to add one, which essentially covers us as far as making sure that the staff members that transport students in those vehicles have the appropriate education, certification, licensure, safety training, etc. So that's an added policy update with the purchase of school vans, which is a good thing.
How many people do we currently have certified on the school vans to drive them?
We're in the process of certifying them. We have a handful right now, and we're going to continue to add as we go along. The great thing about the school vans is if you have a bus driver endorsement, you automatically are qualified to drive a van. So all of our bus drivers are. I also know that like Mr. Quinzel, our girls golf coach, has current certification. And then I'm also going to be working with Mrs. Rhodes as far as some other essential personnel that I'd like to have, special ed teachers as far as being able to transport a special ed student or aides as well. I think it would also be beneficial to have, just for emergency purposes, each of our building principals receive van certification, just in case of an emergency situation where they may have to transport a student. Really, the certification for a van is extremely easy because if you have a driver's license, you can drive a van. You essentially have to watch a video show that you can safely cross railroad crossings and do a little bit of maneuverability and turn in a 50-question open book test, and that's all you have to do to get van certification. So I would like to get as many people certified as possible. I think some other academic team would be a good one to have certified, golf coaches, even our cross-country coaches as they advance in tournament, and you only, maybe have
2.
5 or 6, 7 kids that go along would be great. So I think they would get great use, and we're already getting use out of them. We took them yesterday to go visit some school districts, so I know the academic team is taking them as well. Those are kind of some of the vision I have as far as how they can get used. And the good thing is, our buses currently get anywhere from 4 to 8 miles per gallon, which isn't a lot. And yesterday when we took the vans, we were getting about 16 or 17 gallons per gallon. So it's going to be a cost savings it was a cost up front to purchase, but I think in the long run, it's going to be a savings as far as wear and tear and better gas mileage for trips.
What about out-of-state travel? Like the band director wants to take some kids to Ball State or someplace like that for something like that. Is that a possibility?
It absolutely would be, correct.
Okay. I don't know if there's anything special about crossing state lines or not.
I don't believe so. I think, the same thing is in play as far as travel as it would be with buses. I mean, if it's obviously an overnight trip, then they would need school board approval for all overnight trips. And that essentially allows them to travel across straight lines.
All right.
But it wouldn't say they couldn't do a day trip and go up to, like you said, Ball State for a one-day, band competition and then turn around and come home.
Right.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
They could be used a lot in the summer too for teams that go to team camps, those kind of things. If soccer has a camp or basketball or whatever it might be. Did I miss any? I think I got them all.
I think you got them all. I think you were just saying that 2266 replaced one, but you didn't really talk about 2266 itself.
2266.
Because it replaces that 55-7 whatever. It's the non-discrimination one or whatever.
Was it that we were voting on that policy, or we already had that policy in place and they're just removing that policy, stating that we already had the other one that covered that?
I don't know. That's what I needed clarification on because I don't know what's happening.
2266 says it's a brand new policy, Jacob,
Yeah.
in the text.
Seems a lot more lengthy.
Let's see it.
Okay, I don't have that on my review sheet. I wasn't at school today, obviously. I'm gonna have to get with Della and see where that's at on this. Let me send you guys an email tomorrow.
Okay.
I apologize.
Oh, you're all right.
Sounds good.
As soon as I find that out tomorrow, I will send you guys an email and I will give the specifics on exactly what that all entails.
Okay. Any other questions? So Justin, the comment that I had is reviewing a lot of the policies. It seems as though there are several elementary errors in the Neola policies.
Okay.
With their grammar, sentence structure, and they're very slow in updating their policies with regards to the Ohio Revised Code. My question or comment really is Neola really the appropriate organization for us to maintain our policies to be at the level that we need them to be? versus utilizing another source. So I thought I would just throw that out there. If there was anything, that you thought that we should be looking at to potentially go to or maintain with Neola. But I mean, they're I would expect from a service that we're paying for that provides policy to schools across the nation and specifically in Ohio, that there would be more in line with an educational institution with appropriate spelling and punctuation and sentence structure than what they are.
Yeah, it's probably a bad look for the district, but I just want people to realize that that's the information that we receive from them. So, it's not necessarily us providing the grammar and the spelling. I can definitely, reach out to them and have some conversations in regards to those kind of things. The only two entities that I'm aware of, and there could be more, but I would say the two most popular in the state of Ohio as far as receiving policies for districts would be Neola, which is what we use. And then also there's another option out there that some districts choose to utilize, which is Ohio School Boards Association. So OSBA also puts out policy. So, I mean, as a district, if the school board, isn't really satisfied with the quality and level of services they're receiving for the policies that you guys are responsible for enacting, then we can most certainly take a look at other options. And I wouldn't be opposed to having like an OSBA come in and do a presentation for you folks to see what maybe they offer or don't offer that or a Neola does. And we can certainly have more discussions on that if you'd see fit. So I wouldn't be opposed to looking if you feel like it's something that you want to at least explore.
Yeah, I definitely think we should explore that. I would also love for, Neola to come in and speak with us as well so that we can tell them, give them our feedback to some of the issues that we're seeing and also hear what OSBA does and with regards to updating their policies so they're more up to date as well. And it could just be our servicing representative or that section of the company, or maybe Ohio is a small area and it doesn't see a lot of activity where OSBA is specifically focused on Ohio schools as well. I don't have a preference. I just know what I've been seeing in their policies, and several of them are out of date. Even several of our policies are way out of date. And we saw that with our social media one, where it was barely spoken about, and it was dated prior to most social media platforms. I would expect that a company we're paying to provide this service is going to keep us up to date so that we are truly effective as a school district.
Well, I mean, if it works for you folks, I can certainly reach out to our Neola rep, and I can also reach out to OSBA, and we could schedule an upcoming work session in the very near future to do those kind of things if you'd like to.
Those are my thoughts. Lori, Danny, Lida.
Yes, please. I think it's kind of, now that you mention it, it's funny that the social media isn't included amongst these bajillion policies we just read. So that's disappointing.
It is a bad look for us. All the spelling mistakes, all the grammar errors and so forth.
Yeah, my only caution would be, I agree with all of those statements. Our focus the next 3 years has to be the building project. I don't think we want to completely revise our procedure manual in the next 3 years. And I don't know, this would be a question for OSBA, converting from Neola to OSBA, if that would be a big conversion or if it would be, seamless. I just, that would be a concern of mine.
Yeah, agreed as well. I mean, we don't need to take on a humongous project while we have a massive project going on, but if it's a seamless transition, it's going to better be more in alignment with our direction as an educational institution, then that might be a possibility.
So just to clarify as well, when I met with our Neola rep via Zoom to kind of go over some of these changes, I did inquire or ask about social media policy. He pulled up that small little snippet that we have in regards to it, and his statement was he felt that was the most thorough and up-to-date policy that would cover schools. So I can have a phone conversation with our school attorney and see if he feels the same way, or during those discussions with OSBA, maybe we ask them to bring their specific social media policy to see if it differs.
I think that statement alone sold me on the fact that we need to talk to another organization.
Okay. So I did ask about it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So moving on, does anybody have anything else? Going on to number 9, items for discussion. We have a farmhouse rental.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to get some feedback from the school board in regards to our farmhouse rental. CBC Engineering has been out there on several occasions to start the process with the land survey, but also the environmental survey. I did speak with representatives from Garmin Miller today, and I believe they received back their reports on both of those, which is great. So we're getting some valuable data back to our architect. Now, obviously, they need to go through that with a fine-tooth comb, understand some of the intricacies and details. And I think they're also going to speak directly with CBC Engineering to kind of get some clarification on some of those issues, especially in regards to the woodlands area, the potential wetlands area. They just want to make sure that what's in the report and what they're reading is actually what it's saying. I did speak with Laura Little, who's our project manager as well. She had also inquired, or not inquired, but she had stated that they're going to have CBC Engineering come to our next work session and give you guys a report on both of those, the land survey and the environmental study. So we're all on the same page in regards to that. But I would also say during my visit out there, which was fairly interesting, just trying to get everybody on the same page as far as moving forward and what the district plans are. I do know, in speaking with Brennan, that the rental for that, the house and et cetera, is up in April. And I do know that, you know, if you would extend, that would directly impact construction with the football stadium and the start of the K-5 building. And the gentleman that currently resides out there, our tenant, really wasn't aware of any projects that we have upcoming, which I thought was a little surprising, because I thought we've done a pretty good job of trying to get information out there. So I know, in my opinion, I think we need to kind of put some kind of formal letter together from the school district indicating what our plans are, so that he has enough time to secure residency elsewhere if need be. But before we do that, I kind of wanted to get your thoughts as a school board, because you guys do own that property now, which is a good thing. So you're the owners.
Yes. It's fantastic knowing that we paid that off and we're able to move forward with it without having that burden. And it actually allows us to effectively utilize that acreage now for what we're trying to do. My thoughts would be is that does April impact any of our operations? We need to terminate the contract before April.
I don't envision any specific construction starting in April, because I would still say that we're probably in the design process. But, you know, best case scenario, you're going to start seeing dirt being moved, you know, this summer. So, Brennan, you'd have to clarify, is that a year-long contract, I'm assuming?
It's from April to April.
Yeah, so then if you would extend it, then that would impact. We would be right in the middle of construction.
Yeah, I think our best avenue at this point, and obviously this is just my opinion, is we start now and put the current tenants on notice that we have no plans to extend the lease contract past its current end date. And that would give them ample amount of time to look for another residence.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I feel like that makes the most sense. I mean, if they're talking about, you know, timelines for making decisions about turf and grass, of all that being like the beginning of April and stuff, I mean, that's right in that time frame. So it sounds to me like they'd be wanting to break ground, if not by then shortly thereafter. So
yeah. And I think, you know, it's almost 5 months notice if we do it this week. So for them to look for other places, if they do vacate early, then we just won't allow anyone to stay there. That way we could start early if we need to. We may also ask for a 30-day clause as well. For an example, if things do move up, we may ask if it is needed, that it would be available on 1 March, depending on how things move forward, just as a contingency and how they feel about that.
What's the current contract read, Brennan, as far as, do we have to give them 30 days notice, I assume?
We have to give 60-day notice.
60-day notice.
So
So we're definitely way ahead of that as far as 5 months.
yes, I agree. And I think earlier is better. So I think we do that now with our realty company as well that's managing the property. They could start that process now. That our request would be on a contingency that we would be able to have full control of that space on 1 March, but understanding the contract does go through the end of March, that we're not going to renew the contract, and we would like to end it early if possible.
Okay.
That's my thoughts. Anybody else have any thoughts?
I agree with that. And then Brennan, will you also give notice to the realty company if you have to do anything there? Because I thought they had to have notice as well.
Yeah, it'd be the same. You just give the letter to the Remax because they're the ones handling the agreement. So if you give them notification, they give notification to the tenant.
Okay. Okay. And then my second question is more of probably a Justin question. Will there be, do we need to hire someone to remove that house? Or are we going to leave it standing, or do we know yet?
Well, that's probably, you know, it could be a discussion tonight, or it could be a starter tonight, and you guys think about it a little bit. But I do know, you know, with the upcoming CMR interviews, depending upon, well, I think all 3 firms during our pre-interview type setting kind of brought that up and said, you know, this could potentially change the scope of work a little bit. Do you want us to be responsible for the removal of the house, or do you potentially have somebody locally that you want to kind of hire to do it? So I guess, you know, as a school board, there needs to be some discussion as far as, you just want your CMR to take care of it, or, you know, do we know anybody that does that kind of stuff locally that we feel like we could hire on a purchase service contract type thing? So I guess those are some discussions as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think also we could ask for the CMR to solicit local companies as well to do the demolition. I think, you know, with everything we are going to be managing, that's going to be a lot for another piece to manage as we go forward. And having the person, the CMR, manage it, we can just request that they solicit bids from local companies.
But I think they'd be more than willing to do that. I guess it's just direction from us on what you guys, how you want to see it done and proceeded with.
yeah, I kind of thought that our line of thinking with having a CMR and all that was sort of that they would handle and take care of a lot of all that for us, and that we wouldn't have these little piecemeal things alongside as long as we went through it. So I don't know, is that what you guys were thinking too? Because I think that was just sort of my deal, was that they would just do it, because we have so many other decisions to make along the way that we didn't want to get involved in those sort of contracting little pieces of it ourselves as we go. So.
And then are we also removing the barn at the same time? I mean, I just bring this up for discussion because while we're doing it,
I would think that all three buildings would be subject to that.
Yeah, that's exactly what they had talked about during the pre-interview is if, you know, they would fully anticipate, and even speaking with Garmin Miller with the stadium project, depending upon what the wetland surveys indicate and location of that, and we have to determine that still, I would assume they would just plan on removing all structures out there right from the get-go. Because they're eventually going to have to come down anyway, so I think it makes sense to take them all out at once.
And there's no, can't think of the right word, but those facilities, there's no memorabilia associated with the school, correct?
I do think there's some materials that are probably located in the barn that is still school property and possession. Having spoke with Mr. Bird yesterday, he's going to go out there and take a look. I told him to watch out for the raccoons. There's a lot of them. But I do think there's some school property out there that we have to figure out. Is that correct, Danny?
There is. There's still a lot of junk desks and things like that, and some stuff from past musicals and so forth. But I don't know that any of it is really salvageable at this time.
Okay.
And it's hard to get into. You can barely get in the barn anymore. Hardly any of the doors will open. Everything's overgrown.
Okay. And I think too, as we work with the CMR, if there's an opportunity for recycling of those materials, or, if we could sell the barn wood, through one of the companies, I think that would be great. That way we are kind of recycling. We may get some return on the cost of the demolition as well from that. I also know that time is a factor. I don't know how long that takes for them to do those processes. But that may be a way for us to continue with our green process, would be the ability to recycle any of that material. Resale. I know there's a lot of companies that that go and bring down all the old barn wood and utilize it in construction or art or other things.
Yeah, I think we most certainly could have those conversations with Garmin Miller and our CMR coming up once that group is selected. Another thing to kind of keep on your radar as well, and it's going to obviously involve some additional probably thought and discussion, and probably would be appropriate if Ms. Reese was here as well, but at least bring it up tonight so you can keep it on your radar. The school board will need to make some decisions in regards to storm shelter with the upcoming project. And so, that's something that we're going to have to kind of figure out if the district wants to make that monetary investment into a storm shelter. And I think that's probably one of the discussions that Garmin Miller is going to have very, very soon. And also the CMR once they're selected, as far as design process, that's going to impact design.
we might want to ask both of those questions to our CMRs tomorrow night.
Yeah, I would fully anticipate you folks, if you have some, bringing some questions. There's going to be time for that. And I think, those are the kind of questions that you're going to want to ask them. Also communication, those kind of things, and timelines, and how much work you have currently going on. You'll be able to sift through those documents that I sent you tonight, and you can take a look at some of the pricing and how they compare on what they're charging us to do the work for the building versus the stadium, et cetera. So any of those kind of things that come up between now and tomorrow night, feel free to ask during the Q&A.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and lay bare my ignorance here, but when I think storm shelter, I always think below ground. So I never really thought about when they said that someone had made their gym their storm shelter, and it never really occurred to me to make the roof or whatever in such a fashion that could be your storm shelter. So again, don't know why it didn't occur to me to do it that way, but I don't know. So
most storm shelters in school are above ground. So
yeah, and I think that's my corporate background, I guess. It's just we had the below ground floor, so we just made that our storm shelter. So I think it's just your history and what you know and what you do. So, But again, I could just be dumb. So there's
No,
that.
when I first heard it, I thought of a large cellar that you went down doors into steps into a bunker or something. So
Yeah, well, and we have that basement in the elementary too, that the basement gym. So, it's just in your, whatever's in your head is what you go with. So, I don't know what the cost differential is there. So until you really think about those numbers, you don't really put it together. So,
yeah, I could be wrong, but I thought the cost of the storm shelter was about 300,000. And I do know the state has also allowed schools to delay putting it in because it is quite an expense. So something to take into consideration for the district too is the cost versus the benefit, but also what else that potential money could be used for. So those are things to all take into consideration and ask questions about as you guys make decisions in regards to that.
yeah, it's kind of one of those costs that you think isn't such a big deal until something happens and you don't have it. It's just one of those things you just have to be like,
Yeah,
it's a difficult decision. It really is. And I understand that.
sure.
Justin, would we be able to ask Garmin Miller to do historical analysis on severe weather, straight line winds, events that have occurred with the National Weather Service in this area that would drive us to want to do the storm shelter, make it an easy answer for us, or, even in their prediction center, they're able to kind of look ahead, I believe, at the forecasted weather, the change in patterns, so if Tornado Alley is shifting from Midwest to Ohio down, that would be a good indicator for us not to utilize past data and focus on, their future prediction area. Would that be something we could ask Garmin Miller to provide?
I think you can certainly have that conversation with them and see what their thoughts are.
Okay.
I think it's good questions to ask.
I mean,
Yeah, I
additionally,
think
there's
that's-
design things that you can do too, potentially that might give more inner hallways and things like that, that give students places to go away from windows and things like that too.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with bringing some of those questions up tomorrow night that you brought up, Jacob. I think those are good questions to ask.
Okay, and then I also like the point that Lyda just brought up as well. Is there's any structural balances we could do to enhance some interior space, not quite storm shelter, not quite the cost of the cost, as another option as well to look at, since it's not a mandatory. But I think what the future. Trying to think in the future, or at least look at what the weather people think is the future, is a really good driving force for us, I think, to make those decisions. So yeah, I'll try and remember to ask those. Any other topics with regards to the farmhouse rental? I think we got a good step forward. Justin, are you and Brennan going to draft that or sign it and send it? Do we have to vote on it?
Don't necessarily need to vote on it. I guess I just kind of wanted to see what your guys' thoughts were before we move forward. I mean, I kind of thought that was the direction you guys wanted to go in, but I didn't want to assume. So I wanted to ask first. I just know with an April to April rental, it's just not timeline. It's not going to work for the district. So
Right. Sounds good. I think
I'm not as familiar with that property. Does the gentleman that rent the house, does he also farm it?
no.
Somebody different. Okay.
Yes. So once we actually get the space that we're going to build the facility, we promise to provide that to the person that farms the property, so that he can adequately do everything he's wanting to do to that with the minerals, the fertilizer enhancements to the space that he'll be able to utilize for going forward, knowing that if we're going to start turning dirt in April, that he's not going to fertilize that portion of the school or plan to do that.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Moving on to item number 10, does executive session. Does anyone have a need for executive session?
Jacob, did we need an executive session for one, or are we going to wait until the board meeting?
Wait until the board meeting.
Okay.
I think we should have everything there for that. I'll let you guys all know as soon as I have it. For the contract that we're looking to do. All right. With no one having any requirements for executive session, we'll move to item 11. Oh, I would say before we go to item 11, Brennan, do we have any questions on the YouTube channel or emailed into you?
I do not have any on the YouTube channel, and I do not have any in my email box.
Excellent. So then we'll move forward with number 11, and that would be a recommendation to adjourn the meeting. Do we have?
Can I ask just briefly before that? I know it's probably not proper procedure, but for tomorrow night, is there anything we need to do differently given structurally, since we're not going to be meeting people in person? Is there anything different for anybody to know about? We're all doing it just like this, I assume, and have the CMRs all been told that, because, you know, we made procedures with them, like you're going to stand here and you'll have your slides and whatever. Has everybody been told all the changes?
I need to still get communication from them folks,
Okay.
clarification. So I have not received that back yet.
Okay. I mean, I
And
know
can
it's
you
weird for us, but
refresh our memories? What's the format? Like 30 minutes of presentation? Can you just go through that real briefly?
Yeah, I thought it was about 30 minutes of presentation, 30 minutes of question and answer. We allotted an hour time frame. I will follow up with Garmin Miller tomorrow as well. And then they'll have the scoring rubric. It's essentially the same rubric we used last time. That standard rubric that you score them on the different categories. And then at the end, there'll be some deliberation as far as who people feel was the best fit for the district. And then I would hopefully like to be able to make a selection tomorrow night. But I also understand if it takes a little bit more time, that's okay. I mean, but I don't want to spend a bunch of time on it. I'm hoping that we'll be able to come to a consensus tomorrow night and be able to notify people pretty soon.
Can you send the facilities committee the scoring sheet so we can look at that ahead of time, just so we know what we're doing?
Yes. Yeah.
and are those by any chance a fillable PDF situation where we can fill them out online? Like, do they do it for you? Like add the numbers for you by any chance? That'd be even better. I don't ask for much. I know.
I'll check. I think one of the emails that I sent to you of the groups, I don't know which company, but if you look through it, they actually have the scoring sheet in it. I think it's Peterson. Okay. But I will get a hold of Garmin Miller and see what options they have, or if they have a fillable doc or those kind of things. Let me give them a call tomorrow morning.
Awesome.
And if they just have it as a PDF and it's not form fillable, I can convert that fairly quickly.
Okay.
Any other items? All right. So recommendation for a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Thank you, Lyda. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Danny. Any further discussion? Brennan, could you call the vote, please?
Ms. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mr. Elam,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Ms. Sebastian.
Yes.
Adjourned at 6:49 p.m.
Yep, that's what I have as well. Thank you. Thank you all for being here as we work through this work session. I look forward to seeing